This meeting of the Denville Township Board of Education is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Notice of this meeting was provided to the Daily Record and to the Star Ledger of Morris County, has been delivered to the Township Clerk, and has been posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education office at each of the school buildings in the district. Roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson. Mr. Capello.
Here.
Mrs. Lindsay.
Here.
Mr. Cass.
Here.
Mr. Duarte.
Here.
Mrs. DeLuna.
Here.
And Mr. Napoloni.
Here, Mike is away on an extended work/vacation with his family. He should be coming back tomorrow. He sent his regrets for not being able to make the meeting. And if we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So before we get started, we had a fairly difficult week for the district. I know all the board members know, and I would imagine the public knows at this point, the public we have, that we lost one of our students this week, suddenly. I think it was a week ago today, as a matter of fact. Julia Merowitz was an 8th grader at Valley View. She has a brother at Lakeview. And I think the services were on Sunday. The funeral, I think, was today. And I spoke with her mom, I think, last week on her behalf, and wished her our condolences and let her know that obviously we can do whatever we can for her, whatever she needs. The board also provided some flowers for the funeral as well, which I think were delivered on Sunday. One of the things that really sort of came out of this was a funding effort was put together to help the family through this period, and I don't know the last numbers, Carlos, I don't know if you know what they were.
Last I checked was about, it's just over 46,000.
So in 5 days, the town came together and donated something in the neighborhood of $45,000 to the family to help for the services. Something that really stood out to me from our side of the table was the volume of our staff who had donated, many of whom didn't know Julia or her family, some of whom did, but nonetheless felt a certain obligation, a certain need, a certain compassion to help donate, and I was very thankful. I sent a letter out to the staff thanking them for that part of it. But before we go any further, I'd like to have a moment of silence in her honor. And again, wish the family our condolences. All right, thank you for that. On another note, on Friday, Beth Baisley had sent out a letter to the students and families of Lakeview saying that she'd be out on an extended time, or for an extended time. And on behalf of the board, I'm sure we can all say ourselves as well that we wish her well and speedy recovery. And we'll be seeing her soon, I'm sure, at her school at Lakeview. And that's it for right now. Next, I know we're supposed to have the Patriots pen ceremony tonight, right?
It's been postponed. We'll look at rescheduling it either March or April.
Right. And then in also at our 23rd meeting, we'll be having a few things. We'll be discussing the building on Obanaki, the old board building, which we've invited a number of different guests, obviously the entire public, to come out and speak to, listen to, hear about the property in its former state, its current state, and possible future state. And that's something that hopefully we can spread the word about. The more we have in terms of the public to hear about that and give up their opinions would be best for the board and for the district in general. And we have recognition of some Lakeview students. This One School, One Book presentation, right?
Correct.
As well as an intro, I guess it's our Budget 101 presentation to the public, right, John?
That's true, yes.
All right, so that's our next meeting. So, Steve, comments from you, please.
Just a couple quick things. One thing is, if you notice, I put it out to you Friday, we will be having, if you approve it tonight, the New York Giants camp will be here. So we have the Yankees and the Giants. We will receive funding for rental space, which is money that can go into different areas. And we also found, I also asked them to provide a discount for Denville families, which they will do. And they will donate a few scholarships that the PTAs or foundation or somebody can raffle. The Parent Academy for Student Success last week on PARCC was well attended. We had approximately 80 people there. I think about 80 was right. It was, I felt like it was very positive. There were a few people that had questions and concerns about PARCC, but their questions were answered. We discussed the whole idea of parent refusal process to not take the test. That information is posted on our website under academics, and you'll see a link for PARCC. Our next Parent Academy for Student Success will be March 4th at 6:30 p.m. at Riverview, and that will be Support at Home for Student Success. That's the topic for that Academy night. We have had a little bit of a trying winter already. We've used 4 snow days out of 5. It seems like they're every Monday. I don't do it on purpose that way, it's just how it happens. This one was a tricky one. I mean, they're all tricky ones. Each one is different. Depends on when it hits, what type of precipitation, what the town thinks, the salting process, everything. So this one we called the delay at night, and we had the closure. The message didn't go out until 20 minutes after I said it. I did say that the message would go out by 6:30, but it didn't get out till 6:50. And sometimes that's the case. In the future, I won't say 6:30. I will say you'll get the message sometime later in the morning. But we're trying to get it out by 6:30 at the latest, if we can. This particular storm, because of the way it was working, and I spoke with the meteorologist and the local superintendents and the police and the DPW and our transportation coordinator and our buildings and grounds people to find out what the status of our buildings was, the roads, and the safety of the students is really the concern here. Of course, we have to weigh in on parent convenience, but student safety is always going to be the driving factor, student and staff safety. So I will put a message in the Friday folder this week, just reminding people that that was the 4th snow day, and that we have 5 in the calendar. After that, the days will come off of the spring break holiday. At least that's what we have set in the calendar at this point. But we do have a disclaimer saying that this calendar can be changed for this purpose. So I'll make sure that the families know that where we're at, where we stand. But hopefully we can make it through without having to take some days from spring break. That's it.
John, as far as VA comments?
Thank you. There is an item on the agenda for a vote regarding SEMI, which is the Special Education Medicaid Initiative. There was an update that went out on this. Previous years, the district's been able to waive participation in this. This year, the state has said that we will not be able to waive, although our projected students that qualify for these services is the same, quite frankly, a little less than last year when we were able to waive. So we're going to send in the waiver because it's time sensitive. This was discussed, and I don't know if there are any questions. I was discussed in the Finance Committee meeting to pursue this, and we don't know if we'll be successful in it or not. You have to put in a budgeted revenue amount, and if you fall short, you have to make up the revenue. So we're going to try to see if we can waive. I talked to the county business official, and she seemed to think that we had a decent case. So that's on for approval this evening. The other item that I wanted to mention was the E-rate posting for our internet and voice communication systems for the district. We post that on E-rate as a 28-day posting, looking for alternative vendors to participate. We have asked to participate in the state broadband effort, and I don't know if that was the reason why, but we basically have received just one other proposal, which we will evaluate with Cindy Costanza and ask for approval at the next meeting because that also is time sensitive. So we will have a recommendation to you on that at the next meeting. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thanks, John. It is now 7:40, and I will open for public discussion. Anyone would like to step up to the podium and say their name and address the board? How about I open it up to anything you want to talk about? Any takers on that? No? All right, we'll close the public portion at 7:40 as well. We should start putting the seconds down probably in that part, right? Dino, if you don't mind going through the old business of what we'll be talking about at the next meeting.
Sure. Okay, at our next meeting, we will be make motions to approve the report of the treasurer of school monies, the board secretary report, in section B, education reports about student enrollment, report of the medical office, the HIB reports from January 2015. We will also be approving the minutes from our January meetings.
Thank you, sir. And new business as well, and this is for action to be taken, I should say. Carlos, you mind taking us through operations there?
Sure, under new business operations, item A, we'd like to move forward to approve the use of the Riverview School gym and field for the New York Giants camp from July 6th through July 10th.
Can we get a second for that?
I'll second.
I'm assuming they're going to supply a certificate of insurance for the use of the room.
They already did, actually.
I have a question on, oh, never mind.
Not yet?
It's finance, it's not.
The next one? So if I understood this right, they would only be using the gym in the event of some sort of weather-related issue, yeah?
They might use the gym for any reason. They want to have classroom time. They might even use a classroom or two.
Okay.
Cafeteria, things like that. But it's mostly, you're right, most of the time it will be outside.
Right.
They told me even if it's hot, they normally try to stay outside.
And similar to the Yankees camp outside of the discounted rate and the scholarship availability, I think the district stands to gain some money off of this as well, right?
In this one, they send us a bonus, so for every student that signs up, we get $30. They're projecting to have 100 students, so we'd have $3,000. But we also were able to get some other, the other perks are the fact that the town gets some money, some savings, the people get some savings, and also the PTAs will have something to some ways to raffle things off.
Good.
And this is open to non-Denville residents too?
Yes,
They used to do this, or they did this last year, I think, at Morris Catholic.
they did, both of them.
Right.
Yankees and the
Oh, there you go.
Giants, so we were able to move them over to the right side.
I thought the one at Morris Catholic was different than the Giants.
They did two of them.
Oh, they did so.
They did one that was Giants, one was that
Pro something.
NFL related one, right? But I think they're redoing the turf there or something
They
like
are,
that?
yeah.
So, our game.
Bounced.
Any other comments, questions?
Yep, is Denville Recreation aware of that? Just to make sure there's no other, they do some summer camps and stuff like that. I don't know if they intended to use that field during that period at all.
So this was vetted through Bogardus' office.
Oh, good.
He blessed it.
Great.
It's only something like 8:30 to 3:30, and it's going to be on the Todd Johnson Field and the gym.
Good. Any others? Barb, no? Ariana, no? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Capello.
Yes.
Mrs. Lindsay.
Yes,
Mr. Cass.
Yes.
Mr. Duarte.
Yes.
Mrs. DeLuna.
yes.
Mr. Napoloni.
Yes.
It wasn't the Jets, Dave, that's why I hesitated.
Thankfully, it's not just this year. Finance, Barb, do you mind moving this through finance?
Sure, there's a committee report and a resolution, so which one you on first?
Let's do the committee report first.
Okay, so we met in between negotiations on February 3rd, and the one item for our vote tonight is what was mentioned, the BA report, the waivers, time sensitive, and you know, there's, the state and its infinite wisdom, there's always a question about how they get their numbers, and, you know, it makes sense to at least apply for the waiver, there's no downside. But I know we try not to do these things on work sessions, but it makes sense because they're time sensitive. We also talked about the field trip policy again. I know it came up previously that sometimes we vote for things that happen after the fact. But we thought as a committee that just from a liability standpoint, to have on the record what was an approved sanctioned event made sense to leave it as is, unless anybody objects. You know, three of us were okay with keeping the policy the way it is for now. I know it was just like a topical discussion, but it came up in committee.
So the policy right now, that I
It
recall.
says we don't have to vote
Right.
on all trips.
Right, but in reality, we are, just sometimes after the fact.
So what, would you want us to follow the policy or change the policy?
Well, if we want to be more stringent about it, that's our prerogative, but for the books, it's just the overnights and the out-of-states.
So you,
Well, for the book, it's just the overnight,
Only overnight.
not the out-of-state.
Our current policy at this time is only overnight. My informal policy was overnight and out of state. The informal policy of the board has been all field trips, but you don't always get them in advance.
Right, we just thought from what is a sanctioned event, it's a good practice to document what's a sanctioned event, even if it's after the fact. But, you
So
know,
you're recommending, as I read in your thing, continuing the current practice, but not actually changing the policy to reflect the current practice. Does that answer your question, Mr. Nathan?
I just want, because you said, I just want to make sure I was clear. I understood what you meant, but it came out wrong.
we just
when I
think it's
heard it.
good business sense, but we don't want to make it more cumbersome than it already is. Alright. So, okay, so then another thing came up about the timing of our meetings and some of the payments that are recurring payments, such as medical, the lease payments. If they wait for our vote to cut the check, it's delayed, you know, it's the middle of the month, what have you, we have an issue with the timing of the payment. So, it was discussed different options that we could do to minimize the idea of late fees and what have you. So as a short-term solution, at least, it makes sense to have such a vote on a work session when it impacts the billing cycle, like for those reoccurring payments. And then Dino's point, we would actually make a note on the bill list as to which one was prepaid or something. They'd be like the recurring things, such as a lease payment or medical, that kind of thing.
Is now the time we can ask questions, or do we wait till then?
It's up to you. I'm okay with it.
So are we late now because we've moved from the third week of the month to the fourth week of the month?
We've always been late. Now with that extra week, it's making it a little worse. We have personnel constantly being asked, you know, when we're paying, why we're late. We incur late fees, which we're not allowed to pay truly. So then we have to get in contact with the vendor and ask them to remove the late fees. Then they get upset with us, and then they don't want to remove the late fees, so then it gets carried on perpetually as an outstanding balance. These would be contractual things. Again, leases, health benefits, those are the type of things that we're worried about staying current with, and utilities was the other one as well. Those seem to be, it's not a lot, but it's perpetual on those commodities.
Okay, I was just curious, because when we talked about moving to the fourth week of the month, I asked that very question, is this gonna affect our ability to pay our bills on time? So I
Yeah.
wondered if it was just that week, but you're saying it was even before.
It was happening, and what happened when we moved the meetings, the accounts payable person came to me and she outlined it more specifically, saying how, you know, now, once we get going during the year, we're gonna have a couple, we'll be in good shape, because we're gonna be like that third Monday, so it won't be too bad in summer and some other months.
If we approve the lease of a building or something, aren't we just by default approving that expenditure every month?
But every time we cut a check, we have
Yeah, the
to.
check number
yes.
and stuff.
Right.
Right, but then we have to, by
Government.
law,
Yes,
approve
that's,
every.
yeah, it's not I mean, we can run the bill list from the 1st to the 23rd of the month, and then you're approving all those bills, which is what you're really doing. But traditionally, what we've done here is date everything the 23rd and held it. So what we could do is date, those couple, whatever, the 10th, the 15th, they'll still be on the bills list. You're still approving them monthly. It's just that
We could send them out.
we could send them out.
So, I guess I don't want to muddy up what you're talking about. So, do we need to go with the recommendation of the committee, or can you just write the check on the right date?
We just wanted to, again, just bring it out to everybody's attention that we would like to do that and you know, bring it to the board through finance, that we'd like to just point it out to everybody that we're doing this, as opposed to just starting to see these dates. So
Got it, okay.
we don't have to
It's a pretty
officially.
standard, so we should see the same ones over and over and over again.
That's right, that's right. You know, the leases, of course, will be fixed for the year payment of the lease, and the medical utilities, those are gonna bounce around, but they'll be, you know,
Okay, so the recommendation from the committee was either or.
That's
Which one
right.
are you asking for? You want us to be voting at a work session, or you want us to just vote after they've been sent?
if you're asking me, I would prefer just to keep everything on one bills list, but if you feel more comfortable approving it at the work session as a standard, that's fine with me too. I just would like to get these bills out the door.
And these were going to be accurate.
Yeah, we can do that,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
we talked-
That's right.
Yeah, we talked about that, do we ask her, so you know which ones are, you know, the fixed expenses that we've already approved as annual contracts. So they'll be easily identified.
We'll just handwrite it on the bill list.
Yeah, the last row.
You go to that one?
Okay, so we're gonna not vote on the work session, we're gonna just make it obvious which ones were prepaid.
Yeah.
on the bills.
Yeah, the other piece of this too is the maintenance, because when the bills aren't paid on time, you get hit with a late fee, and then, you know, somebody's got to be on the phone with the vendor and, you know, arm wrestling, so this will just make it a little bit more, the process more efficient, so we get paid the bills on time, we don't have to deal with,
All right, as
you know,
long
late
as it's
fees.
basically ones that we know about. We've approved the rent, we've approved the medical expenses, the overall package, and it's just a piece of it. That seems okay to me, not things that we don't do month to month.
On a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
No, that-
What else you got, Barbara?
that's
All
understood.
right, so the other things we talked about is with the changing of computer staff and looking at things, there was something we did last year, the sale, we did a motion to sell some obsolete computers, and they were never, the transaction never occurred. So it's recommended that we rescind that sale, like to keep the books balanced. You know, we're carrying this. And then it was an action to reach out to the bidder, and they confirmed they didn't receive it, so.
And they're not interested anymore?
Well,
We're not even quite sure if we ever had them to sell at the point.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to
This is,
take an inventory on it.
we're cleaning up some.
Thank you for cleaning it up.
it was noted that we needed 2 more AEDs for the games that are at Gardner Field, like travel ones. And that kudos to the in-house guy, he was able to fix, refurbish some HVAC motor repairs, and figure it out internally, saving time and money. We were talking about possibly switching to a retainer for the attorney because of the number of hours. We're doing a cost trade-off on that. No formal recommendation on that yet. And then the last item was like just preliminary discussions about the budget. I don't know if you want to wait on that till the end or.
So why don't we wait till the end on that part?
Okay, so the motion for tonight is the semi-program, the waiver, asking to the county to waive the semi-program.
I'll second.
Well, you're making the motion?
Yeah, and make a motion that we vote tonight on
And so Don is-
time-sensitive nature.
So you're making the motion, and then Don is seconding that?
Yes.
So Barb, can you give us a quick sort of background on it, do you mind?
Yeah, let me comment on it. So we were talking about how the actual eligibility is figured out and it's not clear. Previously, it was 34 students, this year it's 43 are eligible. But so the number is debatable. To comply, it was felt that we'd have to budget $17,000 just in case. And for a benefit, it's just like the time and money spent, the cost benefit was questioned, you know, so it makes sense to waive it.
So this is where my question comes in, I guess. I mean, after reading your report, from 34 students previously to 43 now, And from listening to the BA's report at the beginning of the meeting and reading this thing, it says, this thing would be a motion. It speaks of, that the board has reliable evidence that enrollment for students receiving services has not increased. So I don't understand how those two numbers compute.
No one does.
Neither do we, yeah, that's.
No. The county office doesn't understand it.
You're on
The county office doesn't understand it. We don't understand it. We reached out to the state. They will not respond to us. They won't give us a listing. We've said we can give you a listing of what students that we feel are eligible.
Oh, so
They
the
hired-
state came up with the higher number. We
Correct.
A benefit that's
They
costing
hired this
us.
public consulting group, I believe, and they do
Right.
this determination based upon Medicaid eligible students
Okay.
that receive these services.
They reached out and asked.
So that's what the
I
word
can't get-
declared means. It doesn't mean that I thought we
The
figured out that
state
we
is
had 43
estimating.
eligible
No,
students.
I'm sorry for the
Okay.
mix
That
up
was
on that.
mine.
The state has said that we have 43 eligible students. However, when we do our census through New Jersey Smart, we've determined, we don't know anything about Medicaid eligible people, but we do know the amount of services we're giving, and it hasn't increased. So being that we're unable to get any information, we reached out to the county office and showed them our data, and they said, you have a case here. Now,
Now I understand.
okay?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't-
And I
We don't know
apologize.
all.
It's not an easy thing. It's a lot of work if we have to do this. We have to budget a certain amount that they give us, and if we don't get it, we have to make up the amount that we don't get, just like any other revenue that you budget. So we want to try to not do it. It's a lot of work for all our staff too, and maybe we'll get half of what they say. Maybe we'll get less than even half, who knows?
Okay.
We might not have a choice, by the way, too.
Well,
We
I
could deny it.
understand the not having a choice when it comes to things with the state. I wasn't following all the
It's
the
complicated.
nuance of the discussion, so thank you.
We discussed this in committee, we spent a lot of time discussing the cost benefit, the amount of time the staff has to be involved to get all this information, and then you start chasing people that don't get back to you, and it's,
Oh,
the cost benefit, you're spending more time and labor and administrative costs than.
no, I
Your rate of
understand that, and I
return.
know we've looked at that in my time on the board, even around title funds, that sometimes they're so small what they're gonna give us, it'll cost us more to administer it than they're gonna give us, so,
Right.
and we make those choices. When I saw the numbers, I'm like, okay, there's something about the English that I'm not understanding, so thank you.
Any other questions, comments about the SEMI program? Nope. Roll call, please.
Mr. Capello?
Yes.
Mrs. Lindsay?
Yes.
Mr. Cass? Yes. Mr. Duarte?
Yes.
Mrs. DeLuna?
Yes,
Mr. Napoloni?
Yes. All right, so personnel, Mr. Cass, this is for no action to be taken. You mind us taking us through that?
Yes,
You have
sir.
a Committee report too?
No committee report. At our last get-together, which is personnel and finance, we sandwiched the finance committee meeting in between our negotiations with the teachers' union. So we're downshifting frequently throughout the evening.
No problem. All right, so at our next meeting, you mind talking us through what
Yeah.
we'll be going through?
Yeah. Okay, so at the next meeting, we'll be talking about putting up for motion extra pay for people for extra work, hiring, new hires, retirements, leave of absence, and substitutes.
All right, great. And Mariana, at our next meeting for instruction and program, also known as?
Curriculum. All right, so at the next meeting, we will have at least 3 resolutions, including workshop and expenses, asking the board to approve the 2015-2016 school calendar, and to approve the payment to 12 substitute teachers out of Title I funds to cover RTI training.
This might be the earliest ever I've seen the calendar come through.
And
what does that stand for?
I was gonna ask, I don't know, what does I had that on my agenda, what does RTI mean?
Response to intervention. Remember INRS and PAC?
Yes.
I guess it's 2.0, one of those, like it's the.
Oh, this is the
replacement.
replacement for INRS.
Or it works with IRS. It's a way to remediate certain students who are having educational difficulties without them becoming classified.
Now, is this in replace of the INRS?
Not really, it all
So it
goes
works
together.
with.
It works with IRS.
So wouldn't you agree this is the earliest we've done a calendar?
Okay, I was gonna say, I'll move into the committee report then, and yes, it would be the earliest we've done the calendar. I am always loath to approve the calendar, I know other board members don't feel the same, until the high school approves theirs. They haven't approved theirs, but hopefully they will eventually have their snowed out meeting. They still haven't had their January meeting. It's rescheduled for Wednesday. But from their proposed calendar that they're up for vote and the one that was sent to everybody that's proposed, the major holidays align, so that's good.
Spring break?
Spring break and Christmas break align.
Yeah, spring break and
There's a few
Christmas break
days.
align. What doesn't align is our in-service days. The full day one in October does, but all of our half-day ones don't. But as far as I can tell, the high school did away with all but one of their half-day in-services.
So,
And we increased ours
By one.
by one, which is the thing of note to share with the board when you look over the calendar before you vote.
so one of the things on the calendar that I know we talked about last year was when the parent-teacher conferences are,
Yes.
and they seem to be early again,
No, the
same week as last year, or this year?
28, 29, 30, this year, I spoke, that last year it was, this was 29, 30, 31, the last day of the conferences was Halloween,
Okay.
and that everybody asked us to continue to do that, and I joked and said, we don't actually have that much power over the calendar
Here we
to
go.
keep Halloween on Friday forevermore.
That's right, yeah. Good. I know that, that was as a parent, I'd want it as late as possible to the bargaining period, but I know they were
Yeah,
earlier
so-
before that, so that's good. Good.
So that's the calendar. On our agenda, we met also last Monday. We had an update on the honors biology program. Am I free to talk about that?
Sure.
I was saying, I haven't sent the minutes out there with the committee to get approved before I send them out to everyone. So far, Dr. Cullis has found out that we don't need any special approval process to have an honors biology program in 8th grade. So if the board continues to want to move forward, which the committee gave her the go-ahead to continue it, she's going to continue discussions with the high school. She did find out, and I'm not sure if I phrased this completely correctly, but that it's not like our 8th grade geometry program, which helps the kids be able to take the next step in high school, because part of the high school graduation requirements requires either a biology class or a anatomy. Is that correct, Mr. Forte?
Fiscal
It's a
year.
life science class.
Oh, a
so
life
it's-
science
it's-
class, so they'll have to take something. So if they take this, it doesn't give them a jump start, they will still have to take either an AP biology or another life science in high school.
So this is not in replace of,
No, it will not count towards their high school graduation credits. So
But
it's,
there is a little bit to it though, like, for example, a typical high schooler who wanted to go down that track, say, like, was thinking about a career in life sciences, like doctors or therapists, something along those lines, would take honors bio, and then they would also take AP bio. So the great thing about it is, there is a little bit of a jump start, because now you're only gonna take the AP bio. I think what we wanna make sure we're clear about is that you still have to take a type of bio in school. You won't have to take honors bio. Now, if you don't do well in it, and you wanna retake honors bio, or regular bio, you could do that. But this is setting you on a track. I think the thing that everybody has to be the most concerned about is that your math track should marry up with this to a degree. Because you can outpace your math. If you're moving fast in the sciences, but you're not moving as fast in the math, you're gonna hit honors chem and AP chem before you've had some of the math that is required for that. So this is really for that select group of students, our top 10% of the kids that are in that most advanced math as well. They don't have to be, but it is something to be concerned about.
right, Dr. Cullis, and I think she said it might even be less than the top 10%, that's what I wrote down in the meeting. And that it's not for every student, it's for students that want to pursue that path.
So they would either have to take AP bio in high school or anatomy and physiology, one of the two life sciences. So that I spoke with the science supervisor myself, just to make sure I was clear on that.
so I think one thing to note on that is, this is again one of those programs that we're putting in place now to propel students of Valley View or Denville in general up another notch, really, right?
Right.
Which is very good. And I think we have a resource internally to teach that, right?
We have 2 teachers who are high school certified in biology.
Even better.
And this class will have a lab, so it will meet 1 day extra a week than a normal science. So they're working out the schedule, either be doing lunch or a 0 period or something. It's going to be, in other words, instead of meeting 5 days a week, it's going to meet 6. Not 6 days, 6 periods, obviously. 6 periods a week.
And I was saying, the final thing that, Dr. Cole shared with us was that she'll continue the articulation with the high school, and that she'll send our teachers that will be teaching it up there to observe biology classes. So they see exactly what the students would have been having in high school, because we're gonna marry as closely as possible, since it will replace the honors biology class they would have taken up at the high school.
And I can't say enough about how the Morris Hills Regional District as a whole has embraced this. They're actually going to provide us with the books and some of the resources we need, because if you think about it, 20 of our kids are now not taking honors bio up there. So we're working with them on some of the resources required and all the training with the teachers. So it's really a great effort, and the superintendent is gung-ho about it, and the assistant superintendent and the principals are all on board with it. I think it would really be something to separate our program, because this is just not a common thing to have in honors high school, any class in your middle school. So it's a great opportunity for us.
Okay, so the next thing we spoke about in committee was the budget. We didn't get into numbers. We'll leave that to finance. We just talked about topics. And the one thing that they wanted to highlight was that when we look at our PD lines, they'll look, first of all, they're reorganized so that it's one group of professional development money instead of 3 different schools' professional development money. So now it's all going to be packaged in one place. And Dr. Cole said that it'll look like we've cut the PD lines, but in actuality we haven't. It's just that some of them are being funded by Title II funds instead of by our budget. We spoke about policy, the dyslexia screening, the policy and regulation on substance abuse, and the student code of conduct. Both Mr. Forte and Dr. Cullis let us know that the dyslexia screening, the child study team is working on picking what screener we'll use to screen students, and Mr. Russell and Dr. Cullis are working on the logistics for when the screenings will happen. We found out that it's the student code of conduct one. We're going to be tabling and not, I guess that'll be in the policy section later, I can say that. We won't be voting on it next meeting because Mr. Iantoska is putting together a committee to look it over and make recommendations before we vote on it.
He already has the committee together. I asked him to have this ready to us by March, so. Would you like this removed, or do you just want to, what can we do, table it, I guess, right? For the next meeting, or do you want it actually removed?
We could table it. I wouldn't necessarily.
It's already moved once and voted on as a first reading, so I figured we should just table it. That was my original thought. Plus it makes it cleaner for us so we don't forget to put it back on.
Okay, so the next thing we spoke about in committee was the Summer Literacy Institute. We started this last year, I believe, or maybe 2 years ago. Anyhow, it was very successful last year, and we're going to continue it. And we have tentative dates scheduled for the programs June 29th, 30th, and July 1st. We already spoke about the calendar. And the last thing, which wasn't really on our agenda, but we spoke about, were the school report cards, or the state reports comparing the schools, which the whole board has seen the paperwork from the state on that right now. Unfortunately, I guess for the district, our 2 elementary schools were not put into each other's peer groups. So they're being compared to completely different schools. So when you look at the data and the numbers, you can't compare one person's, whatever it is, 35% to one person's 47%, because they're against completely different schools. So take that in mind when you look at it. Okay, so that's what we spoke about in committee.
Thank you, Madam.
I have one on this addendum for vote, but are we going to have an
We're
executive
gonna do an
session?
executive.
Okay, so I'm not going to move that now.
So there will be a, just I guess for the public, we will be going to executive session at the end of the meeting, speaking about a resolution, possible resolution, and
So there
coming
is
back out.
most likely a vote after the executive session this evening.
Yep.
Okay.
Since you own these policies, you wanna,
I guess I just spoke about the policies. At the next meeting, I will be moving for reading and adoption, the dyslexia and the substance abuse. I will be moving to table the student code of conduct. And as you just heard, we spoke about them in the curriculum committee.
There was some question by Mrs. Lindsay last week, and I provided this for you in my board report. The statute 18A, 40A-17, the outreach programs piece.
I have to admit, even after reading that, I don't understand the answer.
Basically, you have to do an outreach program.
Okay, so I had asked in committee that it talked about an outreach program, and I asked in committee, is that just if a student has been found to have a substance abuse problem, and you need to have something to recommend, or do we have to have something that we offer to all parents to come in once a year and do a program?
We have to offer it once a year, at least, to do some kind of program.
Okay, so that,
We'll have to put that in place with the nurses.
but what's amazing is you found the code, you sent it to the whole board, and even reading the code,
That makes sense.
I didn't know what the answer was. So, thank you for translating the code, 18A colon.
and we'll add that to the list of things we have to do, I guess, right?
Our policy company did, he just shot me a quick email saying, basically, this means you have to have an outreach program, so.
So
I
if we,
didn't even say.
if we delete that line, well, I mean, and we used to have at least one program a year anyhow. I mean, we had all sorts of people come in and talk with the parents.
Sure.
Some really great programs, so,
I know the prosecutor's office does a really nice one.
yeah, I mean, we've had them come in and, we had somebody in who wrote a book and,
I will
You look
put
at
this,
the
add this, and our head nurse will have to provide something once a year. Just come up with some kind of a program. Or more than that, whatever's needed, I guess, is really, if we're having a year where it's bad, knock on wood, hopefully it's not, maybe we need to do more than one.
right.
But right now, considering where we are, a K-8 district, it's not.
Well, it's good that we understand
Right.
what the policy we're about to pass means, so thank you for looking into that.
Thank you. Operations at our next meeting, Carlos.
At our next meeting, I will be moving nothing under transportation, or buildings and ground for that matter. But we did have a meeting earlier this week where we did go over some building and grounds activities. So the two-tiered busing, we're going to schedule for the March committee meeting. We talked about the oil remediation, which I believe everybody got the letter about, you know, the legal precedent that was set. However, there is a 4-year limit on it. We've passed that, but, you know, we're trying to see what we can come up with anyway. And John, please keep me honest. Demographic study, we're getting a quote for a new study that will include demographic, room study, customer service surveys of, you know, students, staff, town, potentially opening it up to the public. We did have a question that we'd like to understand the differences between the studies before moving forward. One difference in the study was the estimated leak project was not accounted for during the original one. So we still have some work to do on that front. The trailers, nothing new to report there. As you see in the budget, as well as the budget level 1, there's a space there for demolition of trailer 3 at Lakeview for this coming summer. Riverview will not be used in 15-16 for classroom instruction. We'll use that for office and meeting space. Valley View will go down to 2 classrooms in 15-16 and use the others for office and meeting space. All instruction is scheduled to be removed 16-17 school year. Opaneki Road Board Office, at the time of my writing, we did not have the write-up, which we have since gotten. We can talk about that if you want.
We did it at the end. I did see, was it 60 pages long or 80 pages long, something like that, right?
Yeah, the bulk of it is on one page with 2 lines.
Yeah.
In Lakeview, a few meetings ago, there was an issue reported where the floor buckled in one of the boys' bathrooms in the C wing. Let's see, the floor was taken up to expose the concrete for observations. One theory was a leaky hose that was repaired. During the cleaning, it would be hosed down, potential for water to get under the flooring. There's another theory that they came up with, and the patio outside potentially not sloping. So far, so good, we haven't had any reoccurrences of any water, any buckling. We're waiting to make a final determination, but to put the ceramic floor back down will cost about $4,000. And the HVAC, we had a repair of 4 univent motors. That had to be sent out, correct, John?
That's correct.
I'll reflect that in my minutes when I send it out. We had rooftop unit heat exchanger ordered, is expected this week, which,
Yeah, and then with the weather, the vendor actually has it, has the part finally.
okay.
But now we just have to schedule a time for him to be able to install it. So we were hoping for Friday. It's gonna be very cold Friday. I don't know if we can send his people out to work in 9-degree weather, but we'll get it. The good news is the part is here and we'll get it installed as soon as we can.
I'm okay with them working in that, just for the record.
That's very nice of you.
I have to work in 90-degree weather.
Okay, well, I'm sure your office is like a brisk 72 degrees.
E-controls, Lakeview controls and UV coils in the C-wing, quoted as being the best it's been in years. Transportation service consultant, report outlining benchmarks in several areas, need for documentation in the transportation area. ESIP, pre-proposal conference, all bidders provided with details and information. RFPs are due on or about March 10th.
Correct.
For the long-range facilities plan, we received info from the architect and the 5-year plan. I personally have not had an opportunity to go through the 90-some-odd-page document. And then an additional topic at the end that Mariana brought up was around sustained schools. Was that link sent out to everybody?
Yes.
That was a nice setting that info this week.
Okay. It's no cost to join, provides a framework to become more sustainable. It's mostly a time investment for us.
There was one attachment that I know Steve had put in about the drainage that Lakeview had an issue with last year. Well, not just last year, a few years now that I know of.
But last year was,
When the river ran through the school.
Yeah, it's at the top of the hill where the top parking lot is.
Right.
Is that something that, I saw the picture of it.
I sent that to the engineer, I forgot I would give you a copy of it, but I sent it to the engineer, and the engineer's coming out, hopefully this week, to Lakeview to give us a cost estimate on how we could address that. I wanted to show him and give him a feel of what it looked like, and told him it was about a 10-foot drop, which might be more.
It's more than that.
And how much, so he said I get an idea from the picture, but he needs to come out and look at it.
Okay.
When Charlie was here, I guess the DPW came up and, right, they snaked it out somewhat, they never finished the job. And I guess was that in the fall?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, they won't be working there now, so I guess they gotta come back and, snake it out until to the third, catch basin. But, we don't know if those pipes are still good. I mean, it might not be going through, it might be muck in there, or the pipe could be broken. So, if they could clean it out and it drains the water, that's great. It's probably costs us next to nothing, right? If the DPW does it.
That's correct.
That would just be to fix what we had, but,
Yeah.
but the general feeling from the architect and the engineer from looking at it is that it's a design flaw, that there's too much runoff coming down that parking lot, and that's pitched toward the building, and that's why it happens every 2 years or 3 years. It overcomes the drains we have, and it flows into the school. So there's 2 things, and that'll be part of it. One is maybe it's something we could do with the existing system, but according to our people that we've talked to already, said that it's really not, it doesn't have the capacity to handle that kind of runoff.
Yeah.
On a day where you have like a downpours with 2 inches of rain in an hour or something like that.
So you'd have to put some type of drainage system up in the parking lot to run the water off.
That's what he said.
To the Knuth side of the driveway.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
You would need a different catch basin system. You need something,
Yeah.
another system to prevent it.
So we need to go back to the budget.
That's what he's,
Yeah.
and I asked him to get that for us.
Yeah, well, it doesn't happen that often. When it does, it's bad. And we were lucky that people were in the school the last time.
Yeah, it's not something we should just overlook. It's an important thing, and we can't have, a river flowing through school every 2 years. So we're having a guy come out from French and Perillo who's been doing some engineering work with us on the Valley View program, and Neville to work on this too.
All right, well, thank you, Carlos.
Just one more question on the long-range facility plan. So it is done now. I know the last time we had a quick preview of some of the things, but it needed some fine tuning. So the architect's done with the long-range facility plan? Or
It's,
That was a draft.
It's in draft form still.
yeah, because the reason, what the architect said to me, and to John and I at the same time, was that the state software, computer program, whatever it is, the website where they load this is not ready yet. So it's never final until it's loaded into that system. So it's in draft form still.
Oh, so not much was gonna change then?
I don't think so.
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay, I thought when you kept saying draft, 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 it was
What's this draft right on?
in flux. Well, I know, and we keep stressing that, but it's, the only part that's in flux is it hasn't been loaded.
Right.
They're not still doing engineering work or anything else.
No, I mean, we told them we wanted a 501 open hockey, so that's in there, things like that. But pretty much, the projects are in there.
And I guess on their walkthrough of Lakeview, they didn't take note of that drain problem.
We pointed it out to them, but it didn't make it into the LRFP.
can they put it in there, or is that's a big deal for them? They're going to charge us?
No, I mean, we can add that in.
We can add an amendment.
Yeah, because if you're going to do, like drainage work and run, a different drainage system there, that's just not going to be a
Major.
$1,500
That's right.
project over a weekend. That's going to be a big deal. So I think you need to have that in there, because to me, that would be like a top 10 item or a top 5 item.
Yeah, I agree. And we really can't have an idea of what to do until the person comes out and tells us, gives us an idea. Once he gives us an idea and a rough budget for how much it would be, then we'll add it into the LRFP and into the budget.
Great.
Good. Thank you, Barb. I know you went through our committee report already, but at our next meeting, do you mind walking us through?
And so for finance, the items for vote on the next meeting would include the bills, the budget transfers, the field trip requests, the rescinding of the IT assets that are obsolete, and we're receiving a gift from Dr.
Tony Pervulovic.
Thank you.
I think it was one of the defibrillator things?
No, oh, I don't know.
No, they've already, it was like an unplanned purchase, but necessary.
Is Tommy gonna be at do you know if he's gonna be coming to the meeting?
No.
He's not gonna be coming to the meeting? You sure?
He
That was
came
a-
when we asked him, because we were presenting him with a certificate to say thank you.
If you want to.
In all the years
He
he's been
hates
doing it,
coming.
he hates coming, and last year he, I don't know why, made the exception.
Well,
Because I think we were presenting him with a certificate that year, so he came in.
as a thank you too.
We could do it.
Yeah, sure. So we'll ask him to come in as well. Every year that I've been on the board, he sent something.
He's been doing something, but last year was the only year I've ever seen him at a meeting.
You tell him Carlos and Dave said to come, we'll get him some wings or something.
Sure.
So thank you for that.
Lane.
What's that?
We'll make sure he has a lane for DBA.
Yeah. Look at that too. So good at the cause. We went through most of the committee reports. There's one thing I think we put on hiatus until now for you, right? Didn't we?
I have a motion that I have to, but
Did we have a curriculum thing?
Barb didn't speak about the budget.
Right, we kind of put that off.
It was
We
Barb.
can do that now. All right, so Barb did.
Okay, so, it was kind of a high-level look at where we think we want to go with with formulating a budget, because of the dates and things, with things moving, it started, we had to give them some direction as to where to start. So, I know in the past, we've tried to do like 0 increase in things, but looking at what we're trying to do with negotiations, with time, getting more time and more, the last contract, we were not incredibly generous. Not that you can be with a 2% cap, but we'd like to allocate, sufficient funding to hedge, where we might go with some of these unknowns. So we don't think, as a committee, it's realistic to even shoot for a 0% increase on you wouldn't really be able to do much. You'd have to cut in order to remain status quo.
Well, we have a couple of things in our favor right now, right? We have the ratables in the town are going up, which would lessen the impact on our voters if we were to penetrate.
Yes, we're supposed to get, I don't have a number for the ratables, yeah, it's in the numbers.
It's, if I may, it's a 2.75 million increase on the ratables, which will help, as you said, spread out the tax burden.
And essentially,
The
with that,
last couple of years, the ratables have decreased, so it worked against doing that. Yeah, from what I understand, it was significant last year, and the year before it also decreased. So this is a step, this is good news for the town as well, that the ratables are increasing.
so Barb, do you have some things that maybe you guys talked about that you think would be included in the budget this year? Outside of our normal,
Yeah, so new things that we were talking about, as we mentioned before, there was some necessary oil removal here at Valley View, security cameras, gym floors, some BMG, like, there's things on our list such as cafeteria tables, locker rooms. The list isn't finalized, but there's always those capital items that we want to allocate a certain amount of funding. There's talk about technology over the summer, trying to beef up the network. There's also allocation of a new curriculum supervisor who would actually teach some classes, so it would spread between lines. And it would enable us, I guess, not to have to go and outsource a lot of the, we can call those the observations. So it would absorb some of that. But yeah, so in its preliminary state, I think we said last year the increase to the taxpayer for the average home was around $80. We want to keep it below that, but we're still looking at a tax increase of over 3%. You know, the first cut, I think we said we would go with 3.8%, which would be a 70% increase, you know, as a starting point.
$70.
$70.
$70, yeah, on the average home. And then the unknowns would still be like Christie's speech as far as the aid, whether it's flat or we reduce it. The, I think I listed a couple unknowns. Yeah, the negotiations. So it's just a starting point. We're gonna get the detailed budget next week to go over a little more fine tuning, perhaps electronically if that's feasible. And then, so the next meeting, we'll have our like 101 presentation to the public as a, you know, first draft.
So everyone, excuse me, sorry, go ahead.
Please, after you.
We keep talking about we're having budget 101, and now you're talking about numbers. Budget 101 never had anything to do with numbers, so are we doing a presentation on our actual budget or how you put a budget together?
John?
No, 101 always showed the top level, what we were planning
No,
on.
I'm sure it's still on the website. 101 had, you know, all those cartoons and
Yeah,
this comes from the
no,
state and this
I
comes from
shouldn't
that.
call it 101.
I called it 101.
We're gonna call it the initial presentation of the actual numbers to the
So,
public.
and I have a question.
Preliminary
I said that to
budget.
Dave earlier. All right, so we'll stick with the budget. So it will actually be the numbers, and it'll be an overview, and it'll be based on a 3.8% increase. And in your minutes that you sent out, you said something about the buildings and grounds allocation may be substantially reduced as compared to prior budget. What number are we talking?
Right now, John, I'm not sure off the top of my head what the number was, but there's substantial monies in there, not $500,000, that may be what you're used to, but it was somewhere in the neighborhood of between 3 and 4.
I think it's closer to 3 than 4. I'll have to check, I'll have
We
to
were
check on
at
that.
close to 600,000. Right now, I will not support this as it stands. A 3.8% increase and cutting half the money to work on our buildings?
Well, we're talking about it on the preliminary, there's not really backup to it, so this is why it's difficult to put numbers out at this point. Because we haven't talked to you about the reasons for things and why this budget year is difficult and the things that we have to catch up that were cut before and the way the budget was built before, we want to account for things in the correct lines. And there's a lot that we're gonna talk about, right, John? And he and I have been working on it a lot already. So next Thursday, I believe, is our next committee meeting, correct? With the finance committee, and then on Friday, whatever we discuss Thursday, you'll have on Friday in my report.
But accounting for things in different lines doesn't change the number.
Doesn't change the amounts
Right,
spent
You're just
on.
taking it from bucket A and moving it into bucket B.
That's like what we're doing with the PD lines, which is why Dr. Bullis made a point of saying it is actually less, but it's not less because, and it looks different because it used to be split. I mean, it's the same money, it used to be split through ways, now it's in one pile, so, right, no matter what line you put it under, if it's half the money we were spending on our buildings.
I think we need to sharpen our pencils a bit, because 3.8.
Yeah, I'm not
reducing-
supporting 3.8, I'm not supporting a cut in working on our buildings by half the amount of money we've been putting aside the last few years.
I would have started with 0 and then worked up from there, as opposed to starting at 3.8 and working the other way.
You think it went that way?
I'm sorry?
You think it went that way?
That's an assumption.
It is, but I mean, that's the way it sounded like, right? That we couldn't do with 0 because, you know, this, that, and the other. So, you know, here we are. So if I mean, obviously I wasn't there, so if I misunderstood
Well, right,
what you
and-
said, then please forgive me, but.
John actually started this budget from a zero-based budget and moved from there, but, you know, we also don't have the advantage of the Chapter 78 increase that were very positive, helped you balance your budget over the last few years. That number's flat now, so that's a big thing. It's gonna be a challenge for every district. When you've hit Tier 4, there's no more increase in that to help offset all your other increases that grow, like your salary lines, all your benefit costs, all that stuff is growing at the same rate, but now you don't have that extra income coming in that you can budget for. You're flattening.
May I offer just a couple of things?
Sure.
One of the things that's in the budget, and this, I don't have on my notes with me, but we started the process and we built our budget. We took things down. We got it to a point where we wanted to present it, and we presented it to the committee. And one of the things that the committee had, and I believe it was sent out to the board in one of the 4 or 5 pages that Mr. Forte sent out a couple of weeks ago, detailed some of those items. There is a $350,000 increase right now in special education costs. There's a $50,000 increase in the charter school tuition. Those 2 lines right there are $400,000, just off the top of my head. So,
And correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't the enrollment flat? Like there was no increase in students, it's just services? So like that whole, like it's not a direct linear relation because we have less students, it's gonna cost less. I mean, there was no increase in enrollment yet in a Wappingville.
the therapies were under budget in this year's budget by over $70,000. So that we're trying to put things in the proper spaces. Is this cutting out? Can you hear me or not?
Just move it back a little bit.
So we're trying to put things in the proper spaces and allocate it, the way we feel it is adequate to fund the district. But just those 2 lines is $400,000 increase. The 2% cap is a little over $500,000. Those 2 lines will eat up, that leaves you $100,000 in discretionary spending. And you haven't paid your health benefits, you haven't paid your insurance, you haven't negotiated your salaries. Those things are obviously there. We haven't done any projects. So those are the challenges that we presented to the committee. And, I just, again, I didn't know we were going to discuss all this tonight, so I just figured I'd answer a couple of those things to try to let you know that we've worked pretty hard in trying to present this and, go in the direction of the board.
So when can we receive as a whole board more of that detail that was discussed in the meeting as opposed to us coming to the next meeting and it being presented to us?
Friday
And digest.
is
whole
what I
Friday.
just heard, right?
Yep.
Thursday they'll have it in
And
committee, Friday they'll have it.
Next Friday.
Next Friday.
Next Friday.
So next Friday, and then we have.
And then we have a meeting on the Monday after.
And then it'll be a preliminary budget presentation on the 23rd.
So here's my question, and this is actually a 2-part question, which is what I asked Dave about when I opened the agenda that we got for this evening. My recollection, so if I'm understanding this correctly, on the Friday before the Monday, we'll get the first look at it, because we don't, for those of us that don't serve on finance. And at that Monday, before we have any input on the budget, you'll present something to the community, which we're inviting in not only for the budget presentation, but for the building, which was my question to Dave. I distinctly remember sitting at this table when we were picking the date to invite everybody in and asking if we were gonna have it on the same night as the budget presentation, and I remember being told no. So I was surprised to see them on the same night.
We can do the budget presentation on the 9th too, on March 9th, but if we wanted to do it, give you another chance at looking at it.
Well, I'd rather
John and I
have,
are used to doing it the same night.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Mariana, and I ignored it also, and I think that pushing it back probably gives us a little bit more time to evaluate it also. And I think, John, you're hearing some question marks. I mean, obviously, as preliminary as this is, there's a lot that needs to be fine-tuned. I think one of the things that I had said last year myself was this idea of funds being put towards our capital improvements as almost like a 401k type of thing, where you stock it away. And I think it's the right thing to do. I'm sort of echoing what Mariana said and what Carlos said as well. That all being said, of course, this is all absolutely a paper, a pencil. So a lot of this can be changed, a lot of it can be adjusted, a lot of it can be manipulated in the ways that the board sees to be the advantage to the district. So I would say that, John, if you can get that to us as soon as possible as a full board, if we can push off that presentation to the 9th, then we can have a little bit more discussion, have a little bit more evaluation, and maybe have that first presentation be a little bit more smooth.
But it'll have to be approved on the 9th, right?
Right.
We'll have a second board meeting?
Right, the budget has to be to the county office on March 20th. That's the last possible day. So we have a meeting scheduled on March 9th, and then we have to present the budget to the county between March 9th and March 20th. So we could schedule a special meeting, if you'd like, on March 16th to adopt the preliminary budget, which is a Monday, to send to the county office. The timelines are, I believe we're on target from what we've done in the past. I don't know, I think there's just been a lot of activity here. I believe to the point that was made that generally in February it's the budget 101. So we were trying to just, get information. I know it doesn't appear that way. We were trying to get information to people earlier. From what I understand, that previously you haven't received the information until March or
last year was an anomaly,
Yeah.
and we didn't receive it until very late.
Yeah.
And the Budget 101 always, the literal 101, like I said, which I believe is on our website from previous years,
it is.
you could present it before you even had all the numbers,
Yeah.
because it's not specific to any year, it's how you put it out for people to understand.
Yeah, I think there were, I understand what you're saying. I think there's some numbers in there, but they were very general, and that was done, I believe, last February. So we're trying to, again, do everything that we possibly can to present it in the time constraints that we have to get it done. I thought we were almost ahead of schedule. But
I think it's great to get us the information. I'm not questioning the timeline. My only question about the timeline was, I thought I understood we didn't want to mix the two
Yeah.
meetings.
And I think what happened was we were trying to get the preliminary, I don't know what term, budget 101, preliminary, whatever.
I would call it the
Done.
preliminary budget, because the 101 one
Right.
to me doesn't mean, I know that you want to spend whatever on the floors that Barb brought up, or,
There's pluses to having both those items on one night. You
Oh,
probably
that's
have
what I-
more people.
well, that's what I said when I asked the question. I said, unless we want
Allocate
to,
monies
because
for the-
you'll have more people out, more people to hear. I didn't have a preference one way or the other, I only asked the question.
Well, question for Dino and Don, is there a problem when we get the detail one, to just send it to the full board and just know that we're gonna meet beforehand, like the raw cut? You wanna just look at the raw numbers when we get them? I mean, I don't see a downside.
I think it's sure we gotta get out to everybody's.
I would agree with that.
So it's gonna be a little more time.
It's better, and I think after our next meeting, we've discussed some of the things here. We did have a pretty good discussion at the first meeting, although we had to go back and forth between that and the negotiations. So I think we can fine tune some of the new spending here. I mean, some of these, you know, in an ideal world, you'd love to do everything, but we don't live in an ideal world, so, you know, some of these are like nice to haves, they're not essential spending. And we got the long-range facility plan, the draft form's gonna be the final form, most likely, so I think we gotta take a look at some of those things that still need to be done and which ones are critical. We've gotten a lot of high marks in the community, chipping away at these major repairs within the budget and not having to go to a referendum, you know, spend, you know, $2, $3, $4 million to do major repairs to the building. So it behooves us to continue that process. It overall has been pretty successful doing it that way. And I'm all for continuing it and, you know, not changing that process. It's been around 2% of the budget. I mean, if it's a little bit less, you know, so be it. But I don't want to go back to when I first joined the board, and which is one of the reasons I came here, because I subbed in these schools, and I was in and out of them there, and I was not happy with the appearance of the schools inside or outside. So we've had a lot of support by all the board members and the prior superintendents and BAs to start repairing the schools. They're a lot better now than when I first joined the board.
Yeah, I would say they're a lot better now than they were even a year ago, and it's certainly a path we want to continue. So, John, when are you getting the budget books out to the Finance Committee?
We had targeted next week to have it at our Finance Committee meeting on the 18th. Just bear in mind a couple of things, and we don't have our state aid yet.
Right.
We get that February, the end of February, anywhere from the 26th to the 28th. So these are all tentative things, and you know, we're kind of constrained by that. So that is going to impact us. There's, you know, it could be flat, it could be less. So, you know, there will be changes. The March 9th or the March 16th will be the budget that we submit to the county. We can still make changes up until April 27th, I think, is when we have it tentatively scheduled.
But
So
what kind of changes can you make? I'm sorry for the interruption. I mean, can you make
Same
dramatic
ones.
changes, or do you have to stick with?
you've made changes here. As that practice, I don't personally like to do that, but, you know,
We had that discussion too. I think that's why I was so adamant about the library aids last year. That was an after-the-fact removal, and the initial one had it in there, and I felt whatever we can agree upon the 9th, and then there could be unforeseen circumstances, but it would be the exception, not like to go sway too far from what our prelim was.
and you know,
Pre-approved, you know.
it's very difficult to do this with the time, the way it happens. And I can understand how the changes have to be made, because you're getting your state aid the end of February, and you're adopting a budget to send to the county office in March. And by March, whatever I said, by March 20th. That doesn't give you a lot of time. So you're playing the best you can. So that probably has a lot to do with some of these changes that happen between the March 20th and the April 24th adoption. So the more we can lock in and be solid as to what, you know, everyone feels is the right way to go will help us. And we have discussed this to try and make keep those changes minimal, but you can make them.
John, the way Denville's worked in the past is, it's almost like a rainbow of, we're used to it changing and evolving as like more information is unearthed. So it's not too early from the eyes of the people here. Like, we used to get early cuts in January, like it was kind of normal, and it just keeps sliding to the right, so.
Okay.
So, I guess, John, number one, can we get to the full board those preliminary budget books out next week, I guess, as when they're gonna get to the Finance Committee then?
Yeah.
So we'll do that, number one, right?
Yeah.
Number two, as we're all sitting here, the two options on the table are to continue with the budget presentation on the what day is that?
23rd.
23rd, where, to Carlos's point, we'll have more of a audience to hear that. Or we can push it off to the 9th, advertise it, have maybe more corrections and more input put into that. And I would then say have a special meeting probably on the 16th to come in, vote on the budget alone, to be sent to the county. So I think that would be the two options. We have I guess from a straw poll perspective, I'll start with you, Carlos. What are your thoughts?
Definitely we should keep it set, we're presenting something at the next meeting, and then if we need to have special meetings, whatever we need to do to get it right.
So you want to keep it as a presentation on the 9th, maybe even a little bit more watered down?
I think the presentation, right, the way it's been scheduled, right, it's gonna be at our next meeting. We're gonna go over some of that information in the public, right? Their money, they should be here for it. And if we expect that we're gonna have a good audience, we should, leverage that.
You know,
And again, if we need to have additional meetings, that's something else.
And I feel the same way. I'd like to see that happen at the same time as the other.
Okay. Don, what do you think?
Agree.
Barb?
Yeah, next meeting.
Mary Ann?
I'm fine with that. I just, like I said, I was surprised. I specifically asked and was told the opposite.
Yeah, I talked to Steve about it today, and it sounds like with the dates from the county, it screwed us up a little bit. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So then, let's do that. So let's keep it, presentation, John, if you're gonna be ready for that on the 23rd. But again, if we can get those budget books out to the full board next week, I would suggest that those that are not on the finance committee, questions and comments or thoughts, if you wanna shoot those to Barb as a chair of finance, so your input can be heard and considered at their next finance committee meeting, that would be ideal. We will have it presented on the 23rd. We may or may not be ready to vote for it on the 9th. If we're not, then we'll have that special meeting that's going to be budget specific on the 16th at that point.
Should I go ahead and advertise that meeting now, or we want to make that determination in a week or two?
I think we can wait,
Okay.
unless someone thinks otherwise. I don't know if we will be ready for it or not. And we only need,
Well, what's worse, to advertise it and not have it, or to not?
Yeah,
You have
that's
3
true.
days, right? So,
Yeah, you have 48 hours. We can wait.
I mean, I don't think we will know it's not going to be a 48-hour thing. I think we'll know by the
Oh, yeah.
9th or whatever
Yeah.
date that is.
I mean, the 23rd would be just an overview of, everyone will have their budgets and where we're going from there. And then March 9th will be another presentation, and we'll either vote to adopt or vote to schedule another meeting, I guess. Is my understanding that properly?
Yeah. So again, as you get your budget books, please go through them. Send your comments, concerns, question marks to Barb. Hopefully she can, as the chair of finance, she can answer some of those questions for you. Yeah. And give you some color on the reasons and thoughts and concern or questions, or answer your questions. But we'll go off that timeline to go forward. So that's the budget one. Any other things that were outstanding? You didn't have anything. The two-tier busing part of it. I know that's one of our subcommittee things
Yeah,
here.
we
So.
tabled that until March.
did you want to talk technology?
Yeah, we had a technology meeting
Good,
on Friday.
good,
Yeah, we had 2 agenda items, the park readiness and the altitude unlimited network assessment, which I believe everyone's received those documents. Cindy gave us a presentation on the current activities, getting ready for park testing. At our last meeting, we approved the purchase of the 30 new Cisco Meraki MR32s. At the meeting, they were either going to arrive on Friday or Monday, and then the IT staff was going to configure and set them up for temporary use in the classrooms.
Came in?
I believe they're in.
Okay, so they came in
So
today.
they're in. Cindy also gave us updates on some of the underlying technology for the park testing. There's a testing cache server set up at Valley View Middle School. There was also some discussion about possibly adding another one as a backup. We also discussed some of the likely, or not likely, but possible problems that might arise during testing with the Pearson website, the network, obviously other unforeseen factors. At this point, they feel like we've worked through as many of them as we can. Feel like we have a handle on as many of the issues as we can imagine. We have 460 laptops that are currently going to be re-imaged in the next couple of weeks. They're anticipating using a maximum of 400 at any given time for testing, so there'll be spare laptops available at all the schools. The IT staff's also going to use about 26 of those Meraki M32s for testing. 4 will be held back as spares. The IT staff's also going to be setting up a infrastructure trial in about 2 weeks, which will entail students going in and taking, actually logging on and I guess beginning the process of the test to kind of get an idea about if the infrastructure can handle it. Also, our laptops are going to be set up to cache the data so that each time the student comes back to the testing center, they're going to be at the same laptop. So as the test goes on, they'll have that data would be, be on their laptop throughout the test. Let's see, we also talked a little bit about the, ideally having additional machines available so that we wouldn't have to pull all of these machines out of instructional use when they're being set up for testing. But obviously our network really doesn't support more devices at this point, so that'd be something we'd look at in the future. Then we moved on to the Altitude Unlimited Network Assessment. We reviewed the report that was provided. Cindy advised us there are several areas of varying degrees of urgency. We have a lot of hardware that's either at or close to the end of life or end of support status. That's one of the downsides, I guess, of using some of the Cisco stuff we used. It's generally very good equipment, but it can be expensive to maintain, expensive to replace over time. So we talked a little bit about possibly looking at other vendors in the future, as some of this stuff needs to be replaced. We also discussed the current state of the wireless coverage. I guess initially our wireless coverage was kind of set up more for common areas and in hallways, not necessarily dedicated to our classrooms. So some of these new MR32s we're going to be putting in place will obviously be in the classrooms, so that'll help with the coverage over time. Let's see, last thing, Cindy advised that the IT staff is also going to be working on a series of items that these are kind of low-level programming and configuration issues that were discovered by the audit, and our people are going to be working through those, and they're already working on them now. So, last thing is they're going to be formulating a budget and a plan based on this report, prioritizing the recommendations, and obviously coming back to us with budgets and time estimates. And that's about it.
Thanks. I know, Carlos, you had some, you wanted to see their report. Do you have any questions after you read it?
I do. So one, they don't provide a lot of detail when they make their assessments. The Meraki, the M16s that we had in place, and it's not so much the number of devices as it is the bandwidth that it consumes. Right? And when you look at, and they said it was inadequate for PARCC testing. When you look at what the PARCC website has, if you were to do it online, you would need, I believe, 100 kilobits per second on transmission. The Merakis can handle up to 600 megabits, right? So it's got enough throughput if it's in the right location, right? So again, I renewed my, do we really need them? These new MR32s. I don't know. I'm not convinced. This report doesn't convince me any different. There's no measure of throughput on anything. I don't know how the guy tested it. Was he had a laptop? Did he just walk around and ping things until he had dropped packets or he dropped off the network? I don't know. I don't know how valid of a test that was, what he did, how he did it.
Well, one thing I can tell you is that regardless of testing, engineers, outsourcing, all this, I walk around and talk to teachers, and I look into rooms, I see kids with 25 computers and only about 16 are on, the other ones are getting bumped off. So, I mean, I don't know if I need a 60-page report to tell me that, because when I've walked around, that's what I've seen.
But how do you know what the root cause is?
Because
they don't get to that in their report. I don't see root cause in that.
I mean, I also have to trust our people in-house, and our people in-house are saying that the kids aren't able to log onto the network because there's saturation, I guess, in the Wi-Fi. There's too many devices for the number of access points. If an access point holds 16 in a classroom, you have the cinder block walls.
With all due respect, that's my point. It's not about, that 16 number has nothing to do with the number of concurrent devices that can connect to it. It's about throughput, okay? So again, I'm not convinced with the report, and I trust the people that work here. I trust and verify. I don't have the verified piece yet, so I'm not comfortable.
So I guess one of the things that we'll know, it sounds like, Dino, from your report, is that over the next couple of weeks, we'll be doing some testing that would help, not necessarily answer those questions, but at least verify the fact that we'll be able to run through the park without many issues. Is that what you got,
Right.
Steve, too?
They will not address it all. Carlos is bringing up, absolutely.
I'm not sure, I mean, look, the park is, there's a lot of problems with park. I mean, I don't mean the idea of testing, I mean the whole, we have 400, you bought 500 laptops last year, and we're collecting them all from now until probably June 1st or at the end of May. The kids will not have the laptops. They will be collected, configured, and stored until the testing is over. So that to me is a big problem because they're using them for educational purposes, so that's gone. Whether or not we can run all those devices all at the same time on our end is a concern. We feel like this solution will correct that. The fact that we're also relying on a vendor to supply this type of never done before online testing with 1 million people all hitting it at the same time, that's a pretty big variable. So I think there's a lot of possible problems that can go wrong. I think my hope is that on our end, we're okay. We can't tell you what's gonna happen outside our walls, but I think we have a plan in place to help for our end being okay. But I'm not okay with the fact that all of our devices are now collected and not being used by kids.
Can you explain that? I mean, why are we collecting them all and storing them until June?
Well, we're not storing them. What we're doing is we're collecting them all, we're re-imaging them, because it has to have an image that has security on it, so the kids can't go on other websites and things like that. It has to be locked down.
So wait, excuse me for a minute, I mean, and this may or may not have happened, we were told that last summer we re-imaged every computer in the district.
We did, but that's for just typical daily use. Now we have to have this Pearson image on the computers, and it takes a while. We have to image 460, 500 computers, and then so we have to collect them all, we have to image them, then we have to hand them all back out. The kids have to get the same computer each time, and then there's only a month in between the next test. So we might be able to give them back out for 2 weeks or something, then we're gonna have to collect them again, re-image them.
You have to re-image them before every test?
Not if we don't give them back. They're gonna have the testing image on there, you know what I mean? It's for this particular test. Am I saying the right thing? Am I using the right words? Right, so it's a special image.
Because I look at the two guys
That
that
Pearson is
speak
requiring.
computers down there at the other end of the table from me. So I can't have multiple images on my computer at one time, the test image and whatever it is we do in the school, that they use it for education?
I don't think so.
You can partition the drive. You can boot up off of each one, you can have a different operating system on one device, absolutely.
Even with a secure test?
First of all, you don't even need to re-image it if you want to lock down people from getting it. You can do that at the firewall level and prevent people from going to any site except for the one that you want them to go to. There's various different ways you can do it. I'm trying to look up now what the actual thing is for.
For
the
PARCC.
minimum, yeah.
Because I
system
mean, if
requirements.
we can lock it down at the firewall level, that's much less work than re-imaging 500 computers.
One spot.
Yeah, one spot, isn't it? Much quicker?
Sure.
So, I mean,
Well, part of my understanding was you want to re-image it so there's not applications on there that might conflict with what the test is, what's happening with the test, or pop-up things that might not, there was a lot of discussion
We
about
have an
that.
active directory domain now. You can do that through group policy and keep anything and prevent what you want to start up, what you don't want to start up, what services you want on the computer, and you can push out the policy to all the desktops, one shot, no re-image. Listen, I'm not the expert at this, but I can tell you right now from what I do know, there are various ways to accomplish what you want to accomplish without re-imaging everything.
yeah, I mean, I would be interested in a solution that doesn't take the computers out of education and spend countless man-hours that we don't actually have in the district, if at all possible.
So would I. Definitely. That's the whole purpose of it. Do you have any clarity? Can you provide any clarity to us for this?
I
Patrick?
could, if I could speak. I think part of the problem is that there's certain browsers, certain versions of browsers, especially Google Chrome 34, version 32 through 34, which are on a lot of our laptops, can't be used for the PARCC test. Okay, Chrome is up to version 40. And one of the problems is, like, if we were in a corporate environment and we had desktop computers that are plugged in and turned on all the time, they would update, group policies would flow out, everything would happen at night when people aren't using them, they'd be all running. But with our laptops, they're turned off almost all the time. They're turned off in between periods. They have a hard time receiving the information and updating themselves. Even with the Windows updates, it has a hard time. Laptops are a little bit different than desktops.
But everybody has that same, even in the corporate environment, right? Because they're meant to be mobile, right? People take them home all the time, like I do, right?
I think the
But
point-
couldn't you also have a policy push the second it gets on the network? And couldn't you also have it so that it doesn't interrupt the actual application and it runs in the background?
If we had a way of telling the teachers to make sure that the computers are on, plugged in and turned on. But what we're trying to do is, what if it didn't happen? And then the computers go out into the classroom for the PARCC test and we fail on those computers. I think it's a lot safer gamble to go and re-image the computers now and make sure that the proper programs are on there. The updates are exactly where the PARCC specified, the PARCC requirements specified. And then when we have them in the classroom, we know we have everything set right.
What OS are we running?
Windows 7.
Windows 7. And what version of IE are we running?
Excuse me, I didn't hear you.
What version of IE?
That's a variable. IE mostly on 11. I don't know the exact, when you carry out the numbers.
So that's a yes. We
Okay.
did a reimage over the summer of all the machines, and the purpose of that reimage was to bring everything to standard. So there were no variations. So if we did that and our standard is IE 11, and we're running Windows 7, what makes us think that anything has changed? And why can't we get that, we put AD in for a reason, right? We spent money to do that.
What was it?
Active Directory, right, to have these controls in place, right? If we're not using the controls, this is, I'm not very happy with it. And unfortunately, I don't have enough data to understand why I'm probably more upset than I should be, but with lack of anything else, I don't know how else to react.
When's your next technology committee meeting, do you know?
March 6th, something like that.
Yeah, it is a shame because we did spend money just so that you wouldn't physically have to go around and collect everything. You could do it from, at least that's the way it was explained to us.
I'll tell you that, I feel like I've been told a lot of things up until now. This is predates you, by the way, where I thought we ran a test last year and 600 computers went, and everything was
I
great,
understand, and you don't know what you can, I hate to say it, believe, because you keep being told things and,
Trust, but verify.
The tech team has been going to the Pearson workshops and the state workshops and following what their recommended guidelines are. I know when you buy the type of laptops we bought and not the Chromebooks, it's a little more difficult. Not that the Chromebook is better, but for this particular purpose, some of the things are easier with the Chromebook than without all the imaging that you have to do. I know that from before previous places. But our people are going to all the workshops. I'm going to one on the 18th, hopefully to get some answers on this stuff too. And Cindy's been going. Wayne's gone. Patrick, you've gone to some too, am I right? Some kind of workshop dealing with the park and the likes. So they're recommending things to us to help us not encounter problems. And we're trying to put in those recommendations into practice here.
I could tell you at this point in time, I know I spoke to Wayne today, we're getting a 10, there's a lot of security levels that have to be gone through just to get a 10-question test out of PARCC. But as soon as we had that test set up on our servers, we were going to run a test today on sampling our computers to see how it did on the test. There's a lot of variables besides just Internet Explorer. You have Java, Shockwave, Flash.
And what are our standards on those?
They're updated pretty much monthly. The versions change all the time. You probably see that on your own computers. It's always asking you to update Java.
So why don't we take a little bit of some of this offline? Carlos, why don't you shoot because there's obviously some questions that you have that maybe you can throw to Steve and maybe CC me on it, and then Steve, we can get some of those answers.
Sure.
And have some clarity on it, maybe from Cindy, or what you guys have learned. I'm sure, the protocol that you guys are speaking to is coming from somewhere, obviously. So we can obviously go through that.
Yeah, and just for clarity, I'm looking at version 4.4 of the technology guidelines for PARCC assessment. It was last updated January 2015.
Last month.
Yes.
All right, good. So you get, Carlos, we get those questions out, Carlos?
I will get those list of questions out.
And then we'll get that taken care of, hopefully.
Yep.
Very good. So not surprisingly, PARCC is going to be more issues than just kids and and moms and dads and technology and everything else. Added to the
Let's
list
go back to the jail.
of PARCC, added to the list of issues with PARCC. So that's the, I think that was the last of the committee meeting, committee reports.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This is, I'm not gonna give a report.
Good.
From a time standpoint, not Carlos, but Mike and I on buildings and grounds and instruction and program, and on the board-to-board committee, they're all on March 2nd. Do you think that if we start at 6, right now, instruction and programs listed at 6, buildings and grounds at 7, and we have to be at the high school at 7:30 for board-to-board? Is that possible? Should we be looking at changing something? Like I said,
Why don't we start at 5 then?
yeah, I mean, can we start earlier? I don't think the timeline's gonna work. When I went to put it all on my calendar, I'm like, and I know you usually attend board-to-board also, so all of us will walk in an hour late. I don't know what,
Let's move them a little early. Want to start at 5? That's March 2nd, right?
without looking at my calendar, it sounds fine to me. I don't know what, Mike's calendar is, but at least some of us are all here.
Those sales guys can make themselves available.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to wait till that day and all of a sudden we don't know where we're going.
Thank you. Correspondence, discussion items, Board of Ed office. So we'll have this presentation. I know that Steve put out an invite to a number of different folks, right, Steve?
The town council, the mayor, the town manager, the historical society, we put a legal notice in the paper like we do for a board meeting, a specific one. So, and it's on the website, and, we put out a lot, as John said, more than we had to. It's putting out as much as we could.
No, I think the more people that we can invite, the better.
Right. Dino had brought up a good point about, and I know you included an attachment, right, with the, I think it's, right?
Oh, the
The board
letter from the
office.
history.
Which we had done like a couple of years ago, I think. from
When they
somebody.
came in, it was the
Somebody
same
gave us-
person,
Yeah,
and his name is eluding me right now.
Vito.
Vito,
That's
thank you,
what I
Vito
was thinking.
Bianco
I can take-
came and spoke to us and presented us with, I think, pretty much the same summary.
Right,
But
and
it's good to refresh our minds.
Right, and I know I talked to Mike, and Mike felt the same way in terms of, and I'm speaking for you, Dino, a little bit, in the sense that you're asking that, the sort of the whole picture be presented, right? The, not just, what the state of the affairs is now, but, where the.
Not just the mold.
Yeah, the condemned building, which it may or may not be, but the history of the building, where we're at today, of course, which is, I know we've got pictures for, and then some consideration for what the future holds. So that hopefully that's something that we'll talk through that night too.
Personally, I think the whole picture is the reason it's lingered so long. Because when you take into account the history, I know for some board members, it's not a clear-cut decision.
Well, you gotta be as transparent about it as possible.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that we need to resolve it, but I think that's part of the reason it's become
Right. So hopefully,
stagnant.
hopefully we'll have a good crowd that night. Hopefully we'll have a good conversation, a good debate, have some good opinions that we can take back and hopefully have a decision or a vote sometime in March, I think is what we're planning, right?
Correct.
So that'll be good. Trailers, do you want to, I know Carlos gave us a quick update on trailers. Do you have any more to add to that?
No, I just wanted to keep it on there so that we keep talking about it, because it's important.
We're talking about trailers now. Two-tier busing, it sounds like we're pushing that off till March or so to have a better discussion about that.
We look on target, but we are going to push it off. We feel comfortable that this is going to happen. In March, we'll have a presentation. I'll do the same kind of thing, advertise it, make sure that everybody understands it, knows, because it will affect some people, differently. So in other words, a parent who needs to drop their kid off at a certain time, it might affect that, but they have to understand that this two-tier busing is not really meant to deal with individual people. It's meant to allow children to sleep longer. And that will have some impact on other people too. So I wanted to keep it on there so everybody knows that we're still talking about it.
As a reminder, the bus goes past, or my son should get picked up. I drop him off at school, but it should get picked up at 6:40 every day, which is, that's not good for anybody, I don't think.
So we'd look to move that to somewhere around 7:15, which would be a pretty good increase in sleep.
Yeah. Well, not that, but I think actually at some point during the year that it's actually dark at the bus stop for them. I think it was for your sons too, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I think even right now with my son getting the bus at 7:15, it was dark Sunday.
That's the way it is. So two-tier busing. Anything else that we need to talk about right now, Steve?
Nope.
That you want to add? All right, so it is now, I keep looking at my clock, but I can't see it, 9:09 according to Verizon time. And we will open for the second portion of public comments. This is not specific to agenda items, but anything in regards to the district. No?
Immediate ask a question.
You want to ask a question? You're more than welcome. Oh, you're more than welcome, sure.
Is that right?
Yeah, just state your name and address for the record, and ask away.
All right. Michael in Denville. Just a couple of questions I just want to clarify. One on the budget. You said that there was $350,000 for special ed and $350,000 for tuition. Was that correct? No.
Those, okay.
It was $350,000 increase in special ed tuition and a $50,000 increase in charter school tuition.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Sure.
It was $350 in
Yeah.
special ed costs increase, correct?
$350,000 special education
got it.
cost increase, yes.
Got it. Okay.
And $50,000 increase in cost of charter school tuition.
Okay. Now, what is re-imaging? Because when I hear that, I'm like, what is that? What is that supposed to mean? It sounds like something with blocking. Is that blocking websites? Is that?
No, re-image is when you basically wipe off the computer's hard drive and reload all your operating system and your applications over again.
I see. And that's just to make sure that the computers are clean, so that when the students go in, that's all they see is just the PARCC testing. That's it.
Only what part would allow us.
Whatever it is you put on that image, they'll see.
And what browser are you going to use? Is it going to be like Firefox, Internet Explorer?
Well, I mean, depends on your operating system, right? You could either use Firefox, you could use Google Chrome, you can use IE. I'm not sure what.
Do we know
which
though,
version
Steve,
we're staying on.
PARCC has a specific one that they are requiring us to use?
No, those are the ones, and they have different versions for those different ones.
The protocol is that PARCC is going to force us, and I'm using that word, I guess, specifically, to follow certain procedures when it comes to accessing the website, what the kids can access on each particular laptop, and that's where the rub is for a lot of this.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments from the public? I will close at 9:12, the public portion, and open for board comments, which can be a free-for-all as well. Consider it a land rush. Is that what you, Mary Ellen? Nothing. She said her piece. Barb? Nope, she's done here too. Carlos?
I'm good.
He said everything he wants to say. Dino? Don?
I'm good too.
Oh, everybody. You want anything, Steve?
Nope.
John, you good?
All right, I move to convene an executive session in accordance with the Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act. The purpose of this closed session will be to discuss, is this just legal?
This is legal.
We want to.
Well, we have legal on negotiations, but
We should give the board
we might have
an
to.
update on that too.
Right.
Okay, so to discuss negotiations and legal issues. Minutes of this session will be made available to the public when the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Cass. All those, oh, sorry, that's
Go
you.
ahead, John. Any, all in favor?
All in favor?
Yay.
Any opposed?
Any abstentions?
0.
So
Abstentions?
we are closing for executive session at 9:13. Thank you for coming to our meeting. We will be reconvening the meeting and possibly voting after the executive session. Thank you. Have a good night. Can we go?
We are recording now.
All right, so 9:43, we are out of executive session. And Mariana, would you like to move, I guess, number 1 under instruction and program on the addendum?
Yes, I would like to move resolution 1 on the addendum under instruction and program. Do you need me to read it into the minute?
Do we need that, John?
No.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Barb is the second.
I'm sorry, who's second?
Barb.
Or,
Thank you.
So this is a legal matter. We did speak about this in executive session. Does anyone need us to go back into executive session to discuss?
no,
No, we're good?
no, thank you.
No, thank you. I heard. No? All right, so then let's go roll call, please.
Mr. Capella,
Yes.
Mrs. Lindsay,
Yes,
Mr. Cass,
No?
Mr. Duarte,
Yes.
Mrs. DeLuna,
Yes.
Mr. Napoloni.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Any other
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Perfect, sounds good. All in favor?
Yay!
Opposed? None? 9:44. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Carlos, you want to get the cameras?
Yeah, I'll take them back if you want me to shred them.
Thank you all, have a good night.
This was in our, in your email.